Okay, welcome back. So your book, or where you're keeping your work, and I'd suggest trying to find a place to keep it all together, even if you've not yet collected your books from school. It'd be worth finding somewhere to keep all of your notes together so they don't just get wasted and lost. So your book should look like this now. I've got the 4 definitions of erosion and a very simple diagram just to illustrate the point. So moving on now to look at types of transportation. What that essentially is where the river has done all of this erosion, it's worn this material away, that material that in geography we would call the load, that stuff that's being carried by the river gets carried down the river, okay, from the source towards the mouth, and we call that transportation. So we're going to look at the 4 types of transportation now by which a river transports its load. Okay, the first of these is called traction. So I'll draw my simple diagram of a river here. That's the river bed, so the bottom of the river, and here's the water, the top of the water. Okay, so you can see what we're looking at. Within that there's a lot of different types of load, different sized pieces of load. There's some really big pieces of load, big stones on the riverbed. Okay, these are really big, really heavy, too heavy for the water to carry, really. Only when there's a lot of water in the river and it's flowing very fast, it's got lots of energy, those big stones on the river might be able to be rolled along like this, and that's called traction, like a tractor. My geography teacher at school taught it to us like they're the wheels of a tractor turning. So the river is flowing in that direction. So these big boulders on the riverbed get carried in that direction. There's slightly smaller stones in the river as well, okay, kind of like this sort of size. These are much smaller than those. The river sometimes has got enough energy to pick those up for a short amount of time. So they're kind of picked up and then dropped again. They bounce, essentially, along the riverbed. And that is called saltation. That bouncing action of smaller particles. The river's also got really fine particles in it, like the size of grains of sand, really small bits of load. And those particles are carried by suspension. They are suspended within the water. And then finally we've got those minerals which are dissolved in the water, and you can't see those because they're dissolved, and those are carried in solution. Now remember, solution was also a type of erosion, but it's also a type of transportation because the material that has been dissolved is now carried in solution. So we've got our 4 types of transportation. The largest particles, these boulders, carried by traction, rolled along; saltation, smaller pebbles bounced along; suspension, tiny particles like a grain of sand floating along; and dissolved minerals travelling in solution. So your next task is, please, to watch the next video clip that's on the PowerPoint and then do the same thing. In your book, record the 4 types of transportation and a simplified diagram showing them underneath, and then come back for a little bit more.